Good. All right. Welcome everyone to the October meeting of the Philly MacAdmins. So we've got a lot to cover, so we're just going to go right into it. So what's new? Tonight we'll go over iOS 11, tvOS 11, and watchOS 4, macOS High Sierra, Safari 11. We'll cover the Office updates as we do every month. The JAMP update that was released since our last meeting, security roundup for every month, and there's a lot of things to talk about that this month. We'll round up with some items of interest to everyone, and lastly, we'll finish on the conferences that you probably should be looking to attend or looking to grab the videos from ones that have just passed. So first up, iOS 11. Released last month, almost to the day. So lots of new features, which I'm not going to really go over, like things like do not disturb while driving, which is very nice because then it's very non-distracting when you're driving, especially in the middle of rush hour. So and lots of things like that. As with every major OS release, there's usually a lot of security holes and bugs closed. This one had 63 CVEs closed, affecting 23 different processes. And almost like less than a week after iOS 11 dropped, they released 11.01, which fixed a really obscure Exchange bug, which, if I remember correctly, if you had running Exchange 2016 on server 2016, it would not send mail, I think. So it's really obscure, but it did affect a bunch of people enough for them to rush out a fix very quickly on that. Since then, we have also gotten 11.02 and 11.03, both of which had some bug fixes, but not necessarily security fixes. So moving on to tvOS and watchOS. The Apple TV 4K was released. We got prices there for the 32 gig and 64 gig, and you can see there's only a $20 price difference between the 32 and the 64. So the big feature of the Apple TV 4K is obviously 4K HDR video for the services that will start to offer that. I think Netflix is one, and Hulu, and some other new streaming services like Amazon Prime will be coming soon. More details at the link there. So tvOS 11 was also released at the same time for any Apple TV generation 4. Anything below that doesn't get the new OS. So bug fixes and improvements, performance improvements for there. Again, a lot of the same CVEs and processes that were in iOS that got patched were also patched as appropriate for this one. So it's like 46 CVEs, 10 processes. Apple Watch Series 3 was released. The big thing from the watchOS 4, obviously, is and the watch itself is that you can do calling and text from the watch directly and not necessarily have your phone around. So yeah, so the Series 3 watch is basically is less tethered to the to your iPhone or iPad going forward. So watchOS 4 and the 4.01 update were also released in this time. The details there, again, lots of security holes closed on that. And then, as we know, macOS High Sierra was also released. So we're not going to talk about any of the new features here because if you've been paying attention, there's been a lot of bugs, and generally there's like a general sense of it was not ready to be released, at least from an enterprise and management perspective. So like the big things we got with High Sierra obviously is APS conversions. But it's only for Macs with pure SSDs, like Macs with spinning rust, hard drives, and Fusion drives do not get converted automatically. They stay at HFS Plus. And we get like the HEVC codec and Metal 2, VR, the VR kit in that as well. But the big thing for a lot of us who have Active Directory is that there were a lot of bugs with Active Directory and mobile accounts. So I didn't list them here in the slide, but there are things like if you, this is stuff we saw in the betas before we're filing bugs about, but didn't get resolved for the 10.13.0 release. If you have an AD mobile account and you on the Touch Bar Mac and you had fingerprints on it, if you upgraded to High Sierra after a certain beta, the Touch ID system preference went away, and you could not use your fingerprints to unlock the Mac going forward. So that's one bug. Upgrading to High Sierra with AD mobile accounts, if you are off the network, it will not finish the upgrade. That's another bug. We'll finish the upgrade to connect back to the network, and then it should finish. Mostly. I think we seem to be running into an issue where the upgrade doesn't complete, and connecting back to the network doesn't fix that. So
does it leave you in 10.12 or is it not bootable?
What?
Does it leave you in 10.12 or is it not bootable?
No, it's not. It's all in High Sierra. It just won't let you log in. So. So that's there. What else? There's a few other things. Oh, there's some bugs with system image utility. So even though Apple recommends that to creating High Sierra install images, that doesn't really work. And there's more that I'm blanking on at the moment. But yeah, so there's a lot of, there's this one, the File Vault 2 recovery key. So when you upgrade and it does the conversion from the HFS Plus file vault to the APFS file vault, and migrates your recovery key and does all that. If you have any sort of file vault recovery key rotation installed, what currently happens is like the APFS version in High Sierra requires the user password now. And so the automation fails. The bug comes in is that when the automation fails, it wipes out the recovery key that's already on there. So, so that's another bug. Let's see what else. On the good side, there's a lot of security holes that were patched in High Sierra, as they are. One of the curious things that you've noticed, I don't know if you've seen, is that Apple is saying that High Sierra is an upgrade for a mountain lion and higher. So they're pretty much so. A lot of the security holes, they're basically saying that the older versions of the OS, you definitely need to be on the newer version if you want to be secure. Which we'll talk about how that affects certain things. That's going to have its own little thing in a minute here. The supplemental update that came out, again, was one of those things where there was 2 major flaws discovered upon release, and they rushed out a patch to close those. Mainly because they got super viral hits on Twitter, went super viral on Twitter, and hit all the news blogs as well. The one was if you create a APFS volume through disk utility and encrypted it and stored a hint for that volume, instead of actually displaying the hint, it would display your password instead.
That's a great hint.
That's my favorite bug.
So
it is a really good hint.
So the supplemental update fixed that. Also, Patrick Wardle discovered that if an app used synthetic clicks, it would automatically send whatever approval through, and you would not get the keychain authorization prompt for your username and password. So
That means Apple events, or
what?
does that mean Apple events, or?
Apple events, yes. So yeah, so both those were closed in the supplemental update, and Apple says on their page for the supplemental update that these fixes were rolled into the new versions of the installer. So people today, when they install High Sierra, will have these fixes applied to that version.
Different build.
It's a different build. All it did was, because of the supplemental update, it didn't change the version number, it just changed the build number. So the new installer has the new build instead. So that's a couple of things there. So Office 2016 updates. While we were away, 1538 and 1539 were released, which includes fixes to Outlook, Word, PowerPoint. The link will go into those in detail. Any new features are usually for O365 customers, not for volume licensed. Again, on the website, they'll detail some of those. So while we were away, Office 2011 7.7 was released. It was the final update for Office 2011, because as of the 10th of this month, Office 2011 was officially end of life by Microsoft and will no longer be supported going forward. So if you have users who are still running Office 2011, now is the time to, now is past the time to get them off of that, actually. So, and I know, because I have users who are like this, who don't think that the Office 2016 version or prefer the 2011 version of some features to the 2016 version of other features. So that's why they haven't upgraded, but now we're going to kind of have to force their hand. And Skype for Business 16.11.149 was released. The big thing there is that it now gives you the option for sign-in to use user client certs. So if any of you besides us use AD user certs, that may be something useful to look into.
Can I ask a question about Outlook?
Sure.
We've been testing High Sierra with the different applications at Temple University, and the one that I saw that just did not work has been Outlook. So anything more on that? I mean, we're going to do more research too. Everything else seems to run.
We are not. So in my organization, we're not deploying High Sierra yet, mainly because of all those AD bugs, because we're a big AD shop. So, but in the beta testing that I've been doing, I haven't seen any issues with Office 2016. So,
Just curious. What is testing for?
Yeah, when we get to the open discussion, we can pass it around and see if anybody else has a bit more to shed on that. Because I think part of it may be because I'm on the Office 16 versions now, because I'm on Fast Decider. But we can discuss that more in the open discussion when we get to it. So, while we're away, Jamf Pro Server 9.101 was released. This one was released with full compatibility for High Sierra, iOS 11, and tvOS. So that means new configuration profile options and remote commands for macOS and iOS. One of the big things is you can now clear or retain extension attribute values for Macs or mobile devices during a re-enrollment. So that's something that may prove useful in your environment. Also, calling this App Store app device compatibility, it's essentially the JSS now checks devices against the requirements for the App Store apps and shouldn't offer apps to devices that are incompatible. I think there was a particular issue with someone I know. There's another admin who found a bug with that. but otherwise seems to be working for other people. There's lots of product issues and defects that were closed on that. The link provided goes right to known issues, link on Jam sites for more details on that. So moving on to the security roundup. Obviously, the big one was the Equifax breach. One of the three major credit bureaus disclosed a massive breach affecting nearly 150 million consumers. So probably about half the people in this room, at least.
More than that, because there's of the 340 million people in the country, a lot of them are kids.
Yes.
So probably about 2/3 adults.
Yes. So like most of the people in this room then.
Did you notice the fun part,
So,
Jim?
what?
You notice the fun part, Jim, where if you check if you were affected, you agree to not sue them?
Yeah. So
They claim to have changed that.
yeah, Equifax has majorly mishandled the breach and subsequent disclosure and how they're trying to remedy that. Yeah, I could probably fill a whole slide with the stuff going on with Equifax. If I didn't, the link goes right to a very comprehensive RS technical roundup of some of the stuff, including why the breach happened and what you can do for that. Basically, you should probably all be freezing your credit right now,
Or at least put them on it.
or moderate. The other big thing actually happened this week. The crack vulnerability, as it was called. Basically, it's a major vulnerability in the WPA spec itself, particularly in what they call the four-way handshake. That could be exploited to intercept and snoop traffic. This pretty much any Wi-Fi device is affected by this. So routers, computers, phones, tablets, smart TVs, smart appliances, anything that connects to Wi-Fi. And if you're using WPA2 for your home Wi-Fi network, which everybody should have been doing, that means you're affected.
No, man, WPA.
So, going to web doesn't solve anybody's problems. So, but most of the major vendors, like Microsoft, Aruba, Cisco, and those have already released patches or will be releasing patches shortly. Apple says that the current beta versions of the next updates they have for their OSs have this patch applied, and I think they recently released beta 3 for the 10.13.1 update. So we're looking at that as whenever those get released, which may be next week at the earliest, maybe. Then you can start patching all your Macs for this particular vulnerability. One of the things that we've done internally to sort of mitigate this until all the patches have been pushed to all the machines is and to all the APs, because we're a Cisco shop, and I think the sheer number of APs and controllers that need to be updated, I think has driven our network guys to start drinking. Earlier than usual.
Yeah.
One of the things we've done is we've turned off 802.11r, which is the roaming protocol, to sort of try and mitigate that. But Macs actually don't support that protocol. Mac OS doesn't support that protocol. iOS devices do. So for Mac users, it's like a little bit of a blessing in disguise, and that they're less susceptible, but still susceptible to this. The one thing that's not clear yet, because I haven't gotten an answer yet, is that there's also security updates coming for El Capitan and Sierra. It's not clear whether the crack fix is going to be included in those updates. If we're going by Apple's word that all the beta updates for the current OSs it holds to those, then we should expect it to be. But yeah, I can't. It's too early to tell until they actually release it and we see what's actually in the notes. Looking at the notes, there's nothing there. There's nothing there yet, so we don't know. It's up in the air. So Apple not patching a major vulnerability for older OSs is something they've done before. The Broadphone vulnerability, if you guys remember that, that was not patched for. That was only patched for Sierra. Was not patched for El Capitan or Yosemite. So anything running El Capitan or Yosemite is still vulnerable to Broadphone at this time. So. So it's quite possible that Apple will fix crack only for High Sierra, which means that if you want to get all your Macs covered, upgrade to High Sierra, which will be an endeavor, especially for those of us who have large fleets. So here's hoping it's included in the security updates. So.
Do you know if there are release updates for airport streams?
Apple did not say. Actually, what I did hear, what I did hear third hand was that the Apple airports weren't affected, and I think we were just speculating because in the discussion on breakdown of the person who discovered the disclosure, the person who disclosed the vulnerability, in his paper he was saying that Windows and Mac OS were less affected by this vulnerability because they did not implement the spec as written. Like they did their own thing, so they're less vulnerable to the crack attack. So we're speculating that the airport base stations of Apple saying they're not affected means they didn't apply the spec correctly to the airport base station. So, but we don't know. It's just speculation. It's something I heard third hand. So it's possible. We'll know more once they actually finally release all those updates. So also this week, another day, another Flash vulnerability. This one is a remote code execution exploit, as most of them are, but this one is so bad. Google has set the kill switch on all prior versions of Flash for Google Chrome. So yeah, that's probably a good sign that we want to make sure everything is up to date on Flash if you deploy Flash or manage Flash updates. So while we were away, there was a big another crypto vulnerability discovered in RSA keys. Affected like even the 2024 and 2048 bit keys. I think was it like 1 million keys were affected. So the Ars Technica article linked on there has way more details. But if you're using RSA, it may be time to rotate your keys. Also, iTerm2 is a popular terminal replacement app. It had if you had this feature that it would do DSS lookups for some terms in the terminal window while you're doing that, it was discovered that it was leaking data like a sieve through those DNS lookups. And the fix essentially was to turn off that feature, and new versions of iTerm2 have that feature off by default now. So I don't know if they've actually fixed the vulnerability itself, but that's something that was discovered in iTerm2. Was kind of a big deal among our developers. I'm not sure, may have not been among your population depending on what they did, but that was something kind of big. Oh, speaking of developers, another big thing was the PyP repo. Apparently had some of the modules in there were affected with malicious install scripts that would install extra things. And this was like common modules to install from like using pip in Python, and that was a big deal because there was a bunch of anybody who uses Python probably installs modules through pip, and there really isn't any sort of like validation or checks in the pip install or easy install commands when you do that. So like there's no, I don't even think they're even doing any sort of checksumming. Could be wrong, but essentially like there's no guarantee that the bits that you download are actually the bits you're supposed to be downloading and they match. So hopefully this spurs some development on that end for those, so that you can be sure the modules you install for Python actually the modules you want and not anything malicious. Okay, moving on to items of interest. We talked about the Jamf 101. On the flip side, Monkey's now at 3.1. There's a lot of updates for High Sierra compatibility that just kind of pushed onto that single phrase. But there's a lot of stuff, a lot of features built around that. There's some new bootstrapping behavior and changes to Managed Software Center. The link will go right to the release page, which details all the new changes. So if you're using Monkey in your environment, you will check those out and upgrade to 3.1. So also of interest, Nomad 1.1. This has lots of new functionality. I'm going to list a couple of things here, like the new shares menu. You can now set Nomad to mount user shares and shared drives automatically. The keychain item syncing, so Nomad, when you change a password through Nomad, it will sync some items in the keychain, probably things like Mail or Outlook and the like for there. Also, you now have the ability to use 802.1x TLS profiles for user certs, if you're using user certs for AD authentication or for wireless authentication. So lots of new stuff in Nomad 1.1. So if you are using that or looking into Nomad, this is probably the release you want to look into the most. Auto DMG, auto damage. 1.8. This has High Sierra compatibility. Is the big thing. It'll build images from DMGs from the High Sierra installer for use from there. The one drawback is that I don't think it includes the firmware updates. So if you're using auto damage images if you're using auto damage images in things like Casper imaging, where you just have the auto DMG created DMG in Casper and then do a wipe and apply that. Because High Sierra, because it doesn't include the firmware installers in High Sierra, you will not have a bootable Mac if you do that. So the firmware installers that come within the High Sierra installer install the APFS drivers for APFS usage and does the conversion as well. So so you can't use APFS if you're going to use the auto damage in the traditional Casper imaging sort of workflow. And I think that also affects Monkey at some bit as well.
Pretty much everything.
So pretty much everything. So yeah, so High Sierra is kind of there's problems to overcome still in High Sierra. Which brings us to
Auto DMG does still make. There's a toggle you can make HFS plus.
Yes, you can still make HFS plus. So if you want to stay HFS plus for a little bit still, you could do that. So, but that brings us to Imager 1.3.10. This has abilities to do APFS restores. So I know there's lots of people who've been working on this specifically to get this to work. So if you're not using Imager, this might be something to look into now, especially since so far it does everything correctly for APFS. if you set it up correctly. So, yeah, if you're using Casper Imaging and Deploy Studio and want to still do a similar workflow, Imager might be something you want to look into going forward. Also, talking about imaging, Deploy Studio Server 1.78 was released. This was released actually a while ago, but we missed it. So it's not current. It was like the 1.78 does not specifically say anything about High Sierra compatibility. So I don't think that Deploy Studio has anything special for APFS built in yet, and because it's sort of a semi-maintained project now, I'm not sure if it's going to have that anytime soon. But if you're using that, that's been up there. So there's lots more stuff about High Sierra and new ways of doing things that come with High Sierra that I could fill 3 more slides with. But Scripting OSX, I forget what his real name is, has a did a roundup for us. And the link there goes right to his site, which all the blog articles about, includes Rich's talking about APFS and what's new in APFS, and also file vault encryption and stuff like that. And everybody trying to updating their workflows or finding new things about APFS and how things work now, and High Sierra and what's different in High Sierra and how that affects other things as well. So that's something you want to check out if you have deployed High Sierra or haven't yet and want to try and get a leg up on things and problems you might find when you do deploy. So lastly, we'll talk about some of the conferences coming up or have passed. PSU MacAdmin videos have been available for a little bit, but now since Mac SysAdmin was a couple of weeks ago, videos of those sessions are now available. You can get the link from the slides, and that'll take you right to some of those. And of course, next week is the Jamf Nation User Conference. I think they still have, you can still register at this point, but you'll be obviously paying a lot to register, and good luck finding a hotel room. So. Oh,
that's a problem there.
The conference hotel has been sold out for a few months now, like the main conference hotel. And the other conference hotels, I haven't heard anybody, but there's other hotels up there that are not conference hotels, and there's always Airbnb. Coming up next month is the Mac Tech Conference in LA, and at this point we can just open it up for any further discussion. So it's a lot that I tried to cover. Probably rushing through most of that.
Busy months for
it's been a busy 60 days. Yes.
I'll start by saying I have to leave, so I'll get to know you all next month.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Yep. So about Outlook.
Yeah, I mean, we've been testing High Sierra with all the different applications at Temple University.
Right.
Trying to see which ones are not going to work. And for the most part, it's been stable and everything's been working, but Outlook just doesn't run at all. And I checked different sites, and I had to probably do some more checking.
I think it was when we were testing the data, it was anything less than 1535.
I got it's running the 1539.
Right, but like anything less than 1535 Outlook would not open on High Sierra. So there was a minimum version for High Sierra compatibility.
And I think there was a note that if you just upgraded, in some cases you had to do a full install over top of it. If you haven't rebuilt your testing system, of course. But
yeah, I mean that's the next thing we're going to probably do is just totally remove Office and then reinstall it and see how it runs. But it kind of looks like an incompatible app, like you get the circle.
Oh, you get the circle through. Yeah, that looks
interesting.
That's what I saw. That's what I saw when on my test box it was still on 1533 for Office, and that's what I saw when I upgraded that to High Sierra.
That's why I
So,
use my machine.
Just gonna have to,
So
spin
maybe
it out a
just-
little bit.
Yeah, well,
Redo it.
the apps themselves are a sandbox. You might want to, like, if you don't have a separate Outlook installer, you could probably just trash the app itself
Yeah.
and just install Outlook, the current version, and seeing if that fixes it.
See how it works, yeah.
I'd probably go to MacAdmins Slack software and get the full SKU list suite.
Yep.
And then reinstall that.
That's a good idea.
Swap that out every month.
That's a good idea. And other than that, Safari was an issue with a lot of different sites, so we just recommend like our
Safari, I mean, we
Chrome.
didn't really talk about Safari 11, but
I mean, it just has problems with a lot of
It's been pretty bad
sites,
for me.
and so.
Who here has upgraded to 10.13 on their daily driver? Who here regrets it?
so I've been running on my main iMac the 10.13.1 betas.
Beta's more stable.
Well, beta 3 is.
Okay.
So,
Beta 2 is twitchy.
I mean,
twitchy is a good word.
I've been having a lot of issues. I mean, I not everybody's doing it. I wiped my machine yesterday because it was just so bad. I was getting constant lockups, crashes, like completely just the computer would just shut down and then come back on. So wiping it seems to have helped a little bit, but I'm still getting a lot of issues when I'm playing like video or plugging in anything into my HDMI and like for an extended period it starts crapping out. So it seems like it's a graphics issue. Which sucks because there's no way I could really fix that unless Apple gives me a driver. And I mean, it is a 2012 machine. That's what I can't get in yet because education, money.
You should see too. I know there was a repair extension program for like one of those years for the Retina one.
The glass. It's the screen, I believe.
Yeah, it was the screen.
Because the screen has the ghosting, which I do have.
It also had a video. It was a video.
I mean, I could always
Lamination one as well.
I could
Yeah,
always- I could always
lamination is
check it.
only good till the
End of this month.
till when your AppleCare would have expired if you didn't buy it.
Right, it's just gone.
Yeah,
I mean,
Because
lamination's not a problem.
I had that and I'm getting it again, but because my AppleCare's expired,
That's interesting. When I read it in GSX, it says it should have been good to the end of this month.
maybe I'll start to see if I can get an appointment.
Couldn't hurt it. Depends what genius you get usually.
Yeah, that's true
Yeah, I
too.
might have to bring this in and just be like, yeah, please. Battery shot in this thing. Yeah, mine does cover it.
I want to talk about some of the 10.3.1 beta stuff. So,
Want me to kill it?
yeah.
All right.